Did you know that some countries still never qualify for African Cup of Nation? Well, if you don't know the countries that never qualified for African Cup of Nation, please watch the video to the end to know the country. Check if your country is part of. Here are the countries that never qualified for African Cup of Nations. 1. Chad Republic. Chad Republic is among the countries in African continent that never qualified for African Cup of Nations. 2. Lesotho. Since the start of African Cup of Nations, Lesotho never qualified for the competition. 3. Central African Republic. This country is also struggling still to qualify for African Cup of Nations. 4. Djibouti. Still not qualified for African Cup of Nations. 5. Somalia. The same thing, Somaliland is also never qualified for African Cup of Nations. 6. South Sudan. Also struggling to participate in the competition. 7. Sao Tome Prince. This country is also struggling to book a place in African Cup of Nations. 8. Eritrea. This country never set their flag in African Cup of Nations. 9. Seychelles. The same thing to Seychelles, they never qualified for African Cup of Nations. 10. Eswatini. This country also never qualified for African Cup of Nations. These are the countries that never qualified for the African Cup of Nations since the start of the competition in 1957 up to now. Check if your country is part of. If your country is not part of, then your country is doing well in sport.